When the sun dies on Bangarh Island, it does not set, it retreats, terrified. That was the first line I whispered into my recorder as I stepped past the rotting wooden sign clawed with warnings, half sunk into the mud like it had tried to escape the island but failed, and as the wind carried the faint smell of damp stone and decayed flowers, I knew why people called it an island even though it sat inland. The place felt surrounded not by water, but by something thicker, something that closed around you like a fist. Something the locals said was the sorcerer's curse, woven into the land itself after Princess Ratnavati rejected him, a curse that blackened the kingdom overnight and left its walls cracked like dried skin, and every villager, every guide, every trembling old man with cloudy eyes had warned me that anyone who stayed here past sunset never returned, not because they were captured, not because the government forbade it, but because the island claimed them, draining their light, swallowing their name, and sending something else back in their place. But I had come for the truth behind the screams tourists whispered about, the ghostly music reported by forest guards, the shadows that moved even when stillness smothered the ruins, and as I crossed the broken archway into the old market square, my boots scraped the dust of centuries, waking echoes that shivered through the empty air. The stalls lay collapsed like skeletons of forgotten trade, jars shattered, beads scattered like dried tears. And through the cracks in the stone I heard something breathing, not wind, not an animal, but a slow, rhythmic exhale, as though the ruins themselves inhaled memories. I lifted my camera, whispering notes, trying to sound brave for the documentary, but my voice quivered as daylight thinned, the sun stretching claws of gold across the crumbling fort before sinking behind the hills like it couldn't bear to look at Bangarh after dark, and the instant the last ray died, the temperature plunged so brutally I felt it in my bones, as if hands made of ice slid beneath my skin. Suddenly the stillness shattered when a whisper slithered across the courtyard, not in Hindi, not in any human tongue, but in a brittle, layered voice that sounded like dried leaves grinding together, and though it was faint, it hissed my name with terrible accuracy. I spun around, but nothing moved, nothing lived, nothing breathed, yet the shadows cast by my flashlight stretched unnaturally long, like they were trying to crawl across the stones toward me. Twisting into shapes I recognized too late as fingers, I backed away, stumbling over a fallen idol, and when I looked up, every doorway around the square was now filled with silhouettes, dozens, maybe hundreds, all facing me, all still, as though the dead residents had returned to watch the intruder who was foolish enough to stay. The flute music began then, drifting from somewhere deep within the palace ruins, first soft as a lullaby, then warping into a discordant melody that scraped my spine raw, and the shadows surged forward with every wrong note. I ran toward the temple, thinking higher ground would give me a chance to escape, but as I climbed the steps the pillars vibrated with deep, mournful moans, and from within the temple came a mass of voices chanting out of sync, rising and crashing like a broken tide, each syllable puncturing the silence with a sickening pulse that made the air throb. When I crossed the threshold, the darkness swallowed my flashlight beam, drowning it like ink-consuming water, and in that sucking black I heard the sorcerer Singai's voice, low, cold, ancient, murmuring the final curse he had cast upon this land, replaying the moment of destruction in a loop of hatred, how he shattered the kingdom's prosperity, how he bound every soul to eternal unrest, how he promised that anyone who trespassed after sunset would never leave because the dead, trapped here for centuries, clawed at every living breath that entered their realm. Suddenly, the floor beneath me cracked, a web of fractures glowing with faint violet light, and through those cracks I saw faces, twisted, tormented faces pressed against the stone from beneath, their mouths screaming silently, their hands slamming upward as though trying to escape the underworld sealed beneath Bangarh. They pushed harder, harder, and with a sound like bones snapping underwater, one pale arm burst through the floor, then another, then a pair of hollow eyes rising from the darkness, then dozens more, until the temple was filled with grasping limbs reaching for me. I ran again, bolting down the steps, but the entire ruins had changed, paths twisted, buildings shifted positions, stairways that had once descended now rose into nothing, as if the island rearranged itself to trap me the way it had trapped so many others. The courtyard where I first entered was gone, swallowed by an impossible fog so thick it looked solid, pulsing faintly with violet veins like the island had grown. New flesh, the silhouettes reappeared in the fog, not human now, but stretched, distorted, their limbs bending backwards, their necks twisting in jerks like puppets yanked by invisible strings, and as they came closer I realized each one had no face, only a hollow cavity sinking inward, pulling the surrounding darkness into a swirling point. The flute returned, this time so piercing it felt like needles hammering into my brain, and I screamed for it to stop, but the sound only grew louder, until blood trickled from my ears and my knees buckled. That was when he appeared, the sorcerer's spirit, tall as the palace walls, his form crackling with black fire, his eyes two colossal embers of violet flame that dripped tendrils of smoke, his presence so crushing the stones bowed beneath him like they feared their master. He raised a hand, and instantly the faceless shadows dropped to the ground like obedient slaves. He spoke inside my skull. No lips moving, no breath escaping, but the words rang like drums of thunder. You entered the realm of the cursed after the sun's death. You cannot leave. You belong to me and to them. I crawled backwards, gasping, but my legs refused to move as vines of shadow wrapped around them, pinning me like a corpse being prepared for burial. The sorcerer leaned closer, and his voice curled through my mind. All who remain after sunset become echoes. Their shadows take their place. And before I could scream, I saw it, my own shadow slowly peeling off the ground, rising like smoke, stretching upward until it stood separate from me, taller, darker, smiling with a jagged mouth that split its featureless head. It turned toward me, tilting its head like an animal studying prey, then stepped back as if waiting for an order. The sorcerer lowered his hand, and my shadow obeyed him. It reached out, pressed its palm to my chest, and I felt my body collapse inward, my heartbeat slowing, my vision dimming as if someone had unplugged my soul. The shadows around us began chanting. The dead beneath the stone screamed in triumph. The fog pulsed violently, and a truth stabbed through me. This was the process by which the island created its replacements. The living visitor dies. The shadow takes their body, leaves the island, and returns to the world disguised as them. Countless missing tourists, explorers, researchers, none had vanished. Copies of them had walked out. Hollow inside, answering calls, sending texts, existing without souls, and now mine would be next, as darkness flooded my sight and the sorcerer's laughter shook the ruins. I made one final, desperate attempt to flee, clawing at the stones until my nails tore off, pulling myself toward the faint outline of the government fence visible through the fog, but the island sealed itself again, collapsing the path, raising walls, twisting trees into a cage around me, and my shadow pressed harder against my chest, pushing me out of myself, forcing me into the cold violet void beneath the island where the other souls stared and reached for me. I screamed until my throat shredded, but the only thing the night of Bangarh Island returned was silence, and a new shadow walking away wearing my face.